The city was still reeling from the aftermath of the devastating attack that had brought it to the brink of destruction. But thanks to the bravery and quick thinking of Rostova and Ben, the worst had been averted. The two heroes were hailed as saviors, their names on everyone's lips. They were showered with praise and rewards, but they knew their work was far from over. Rostova and Ben stood on the rooftop, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the towering skyscrapers. The streets were bustling with people, a sense of normalcy returning to the city. "We did it," Ben said, turning to Rostova with a smile. "We saved the city." "But at what cost?" Rostova replied, her eyes scanning the horizon. "We may have stopped the attack, but we still have no idea who was behind it." Ben's expression turned serious. "You're right. We need to find out who was responsible and bring them to justice." Rostova nodded. "And that's just the beginning. I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg." As they delved deeper into the mystery, they uncovered a hidden network of villains. It turned out the mastermind's plan was just a small part of a larger scheme. Rostova's skills were put to the test as she delved deeper into the network, tracing the threads of the conspiracy. "This is bigger than we thought," Rostova said, her eyes locked on the computer screen. "They have operatives all over the city, infiltrating every level of society." Ben's face set in a determined expression. "We need to take them down one by one." "But it won't be easy," Rostova warned. "They're well-organized and well-funded. We'll need all our skills and resources to take them down." Ben nodded. "I've already started tracking down the leaders. I have a few leads, but I need your help to follow them up." Rostova smiled, a fierce glint in her eye. "I'm ready when you are." Together, they set out to bring justice and peace to the city once and for all. They worked tirelessly, following every lead, gathering every shred of evidence. The city was a complex web of secrets and lies, but Rostova and Ben were determined to untangle it, no matter what it took. As they worked, they began to realize the true extent of the villainous network. It reached into every corner of the city, corrupting and destroying everything it touched. Rostova and Ben knew they had to stop it before it was too late. "We can't do this alone," Rostova said as they pored over the evidence. "We need to gather a team of trusted allies." Ben nodded. "I've already started making a list. We'll need people with different skills and expertise." Rostova's eyes narrowed. "And we'll need to be careful. We can't trust anyone outside our inner circle." Ben's face was grim. "We'll be taking a risk, but it's one we have to take. The city is counting on us." The stakes were high, the danger real. But Rostova and Ben were undaunted. They were driven by a fierce determination to bring justice and peace to the city. They would stop at nothing to achieve their goal. No matter what lay ahead, they spent the next few days gathering their team, carefully selecting people they could trust. There was Maria, a brilliant hacker who could bypass even the most secure systems. Jake, a former cop with a talent for surveillance and infiltration. And Dr. Lee, a scientist who could help them analyze the evidence and develop strategies to take down the villains. As they assembled their team, Rostova and Ben briefed them on the situation. They explained the extent of the villainous network and the danger it posed to the city. The team listened intently, their faces set with determination. "We have a long road ahead of us," Rostova said, "but with our combined skills and expertise, I know we can take down this network and bring peace to the city." The team nodded in agreement, ready to face the challenge. They began to work together, following leads and gathering evidence. Maria hacked into the villains' communication systems, intercepting messages and tracking their movements. Jake infiltrated the network, gathering intel from the inside. And Dr. Lee analyzed the data, looking for patterns and connections. Rostova and Ben led the team, coordinating their efforts and making strategic decisions. They worked tirelessly, fueled by their determination to bring justice to the city. As they delved deeper into the network, they encountered increasing resistance. The villains were desperate to protect their operation, and they would stop at nothing to silence Rostova and her team. "We need to be careful," Ben said as they planned their next move. "We don't know what we're up against, and we can't afford to take any risks." Rostova nodded, her eyes locked on the data. "I agree. We need to stay one step ahead of them, anticipate their moves, and be ready to counterattack." The team worked together, using their unique skills to outmaneuver the villains. They were a well-oiled machine, each member working in perfect sync with the others. As they closed in on the villains, the tension mounted. The stakes were high, and the danger was real. But Rostova and her team were undaunted. They were driven by their determination to bring justice to the city, and they would stop at nothing to achieve their goal. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the villains were about to find out just how powerful they were. As they prepared to launch their final attack, Rostova stood before her team, her eyes blazing with determination. "We have come a long way," she said, "but our journey is far from over. We have one final battle to fight, and we must be ready." The team nodded, their faces set with resolve. They knew what lay ahead, and they were ready to face it head-on. Together, they would bring down the villainous network and restore peace to the city. The fate of the city hung in the balance, and Rostova and her team were the only ones who could save it. With a deep breath, Rostova gave the signal, and the team launched into action. They moved swiftly and silently, taking down the villains one by one. The battle was intense, with bullets flying and alarms blaring. But Rostova and her team were a well-trained unit, working together seamlessly to take down their enemies. As the dust settled, Rostova stood victorious, her team by her side. They had done it. They had brought down the villainous network and restored peace to the city. The people would be safe once again, thanks to their bravery and determination. But as they caught their breath and surveyed the aftermath of the battle, Rostova's eyes narrowed. There was still one question that remained unanswered. Who was the mastermind behind the network, the one who had orchestrated the entire operation? Rostova was determined to find out, and she would stop at nothing to get her answer. They spent the next few days gathering their team, choosing people they could trust with their lives. There was Marcus, a former cop with a keen eye for detail, and Lena, a brilliant hacker who could access even the most secure systems. They also recruited Jackson, a charismatic smuggler with a network of underworld contacts, and Dr. Zhang, a renowned expert in forensic science. Together, the team pored over the evidence, analyzing every shred of data, every hint of a clue. They worked tirelessly, fueled by a determination to bring down the villainous network. Rostova and Ben led the charge, guiding their team with a clear vision and a strong strategy. As they delved deeper into the mystery, they began to uncover a web of corruption that reached the highest levels of power. They found evidence of bribes and kickbacks, of officials turned by greed and ambition. The city was rotten to its core, and Rostova and Ben knew they had to cut out the cancer if they wanted to save it. "We need to get to the top," Rostova said, her eyes locked on the evidence. "We need to find out who's pulling the strings." Ben nodded. "And we need to do it fast. The longer we take, the more chance they have to cover their tracks." The team worked around the clock, following every lead, gathering every scrap of evidence. They were a well-oiled machine, working together with precision and skill. And slowly but surely, they began to close in on their target. "We've got a breakthrough," Lena said, her eyes shining with excitement. "I've managed to hack into the network's internal communications." Rostova and Ben exchanged a look. "What have you found out?" Lena asked. Lena hesitated. "It's not good. The network is planning a major operation, something that will bring the city to its knees." Ben's face set in a grim expression. "We need to stop them. We can't let that happen." Rostova nodded. "We'll need to move fast. We can't give them any warning." The team sprang into action, racing against time to prevent the disaster. They worked with a sense of urgency, knowing that every minute counted. And as they fought to save the city, they knew they were in for the fight of their lives. "We'll need to be careful," Marcus said, his voice low and serious. "We don't know what we're up against." Rostova nodded. "We'll need to use all our skills and resources. We can't afford to make any mistakes." The team nodded, their faces set with determination. They knew what was at stake, and they were ready to do whatever it took to save the city. They were a team, a family, and together they were unstoppable. As they prepared to face the enemy, Rostova and Ben shared a look. They knew what lay ahead, and they were ready. They were ready to face whatever challenges came their way, to fight for the city they loved, and they were ready to win. "We're in this together," Ben said, his voice low and steady. Rostova nodded. "Always." The team moved out, a well-oiled machine, ready to take on the enemy. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they would stop at nothing to save the city. The battle was on, and Rostova and Ben were leading the charge. The days turned into weeks as Rostova and Ben worked tirelessly to build their team and gather intelligence on the villainous network. They moved cautiously, knowing that one misstep could mean disaster. But they were driven by a fierce determination to bring justice and peace to the city. Their team began to take shape, with experts in surveillance, hacking, and combat joining their ranks. Rostova and Ben trained them, sharing their knowledge and skills, and preparing them for the battles ahead. As they delved deeper into the network, they uncovered shocking secrets and lies. They discovered that the villains had infiltrated every level of society, from the police department to the city council. Rostova and Ben knew they had to be careful, that one wrong move could mean capture or worse, but they were not afraid. They were driven by a fierce desire for justice, and they were determined to see it through. They worked together, using their unique skills and expertise to outmaneuver the villains at every turn. The final battle was intense, with Rostova and Ben facing off against the leaders of the villainous network. The streets were filled with gunfire and explosions, but Rostova and Ben were undaunted. They fought bravely, using every trick in the book to take down their enemies. In the end, it was just Rostova and Ben against the mastermind behind the network. The villain was cunning and ruthless, but Rostova and Ben were determined to bring him to justice. "You're finished," Rostova said, her gun trained on the villain. The mastermind sneered. "You'll never take me alive," he spat. Ben smiled. "We don't need to," he said, and with a swift movement he knocked the villain to the ground. The city was finally free from the grip of the villainous network. Rostova and Ben had saved the day, bringing justice and peace to the streets. They stood victorious, their bond stronger than ever. "The city will never forget what you've done," the mayor said, shaking their hands. Rostova and Ben smiled, basking in the praise of the crowd, but they knew that their work was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new villains to fight. "We're just getting started," Rostova said, her eyes locked on Ben's. Ben nodded. "We've got a city to protect, and we're the only ones who can do it." The crowd cheered, and Rostova and Ben walked off into the sunset, ready to face whatever lay ahead. But as they walked, Rostova's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered, her eyes narrowing as she listened to the voice on the other end. "What is it?" Ben asked, noticing her expression. Rostova's face was grim. "It's a message from an unknown sender," she said. "It says the true enemy is still out there, watching and waiting." Ben's face set in a determined expression. "Then we'll be ready," he said. Rostova nodded, a fierce glint in her eye. "We'll always be ready."